All right. Good morning. My name is Dustin Miller. I am the lead technical education project manager at Max Technical Training. I will be moderating and presenting the Preparing to Apply Ohio TechCred workshop for you today. I appreciate everyone joining us. This workshop was initially created to answer our clients' questions about TechCred. And we really sat down and took a look at what we could present to help any company really in any industry that can take advantage of tech cred. And now it is delivered to help any of those companies that are considering applying or are ready to apply. And this is everything from business technology, healthcare, manufacturing tech, and beyond. There's really a lot of options through the Ohio TechCred program. And it is an uplifting initiative that is making an impact on companies all across Ohio. And that's really the story that we're going to share today. And to help tell that story, Denise Bartik, the president and owner of Max Technical Training, is with us. And we also have a guest, Marianne Sherwood, who is the business and IT specialist at Perry County, Ohio Board of Development Disabilities. And she has successfully utilized the TechCred program. And who better to hear it from other than our team, but also someone who has successfully utilized it. And we will ask her some questions to share her insight on the TechCred program. But first, to kick our time off today, I would like to introduce Denise Bartik and get a few words from her on really just the TechCred program and a little bit of history on it. So, Denise, as a relentless champion of the TechCred program, why don't you just say a few quick words before we get into our agenda?
Sure, happy to do that. So, welcome everyone. Some of you know me, and I've been in the training industry for, I would say, at least 30 years. And I've seen a lot of programs come and go from the state of Ohio, some that were very difficult to use. And when this program came around in October of 2019, I was thrilled. And I have to tell you, it's one of the best programs I've ever seen, and it's probably one of the best in the country. So we're very fortunate to have that in the state of Ohio. Um, I'll talk more about that, but I mean, what's great about this is it's for any size organization. It's for nonprofits, it's for government entities. It just really has something for everyone. And I'm really excited that you're here today and encourage you and look forward to you taking advantage of it. Thanks, Dustin.
Thank you, Denise. And as I mentioned, we'll come back to Marianne Sherwood in my first Q&A, but our goal is to make sure you walk away with the step-by-step clarity and the comfort in applying for TechCred funding if this is your first time, and prepare you to successfully submit your first application. So we're going to make the most out of this hour. We're going to cover the simplified application process and hopefully keep things around 45 minutes with some time for Q&A. And I feel confident that we can absolutely move through the materials. So what we're going to cover today is if you don't know what TechCred is, we're going to just get down to the basics of what is the TechCred program. We're going to talk to Marianne Sherwood and share in her TechCred success. And then we're going to take a dive into the eligibility and the process of really getting ready to apply and the information you're going to need to collect about your business. And then we're going to go into some screenshots of what the actual application looks like and talk about applying. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. And if at any point in time throughout this process, you have questions about the program or anything that we're covering, feel free to throw it into the chat, or we also like to keep it conversational. So if you'd like to just kind of jump in, we don't mind getting, a positive, brief interruption to answer an important question, but I'll be monitoring the chat throughout our time, and then we'll have time for open Q&A. So let's go ahead and talk about what TechCred is. And this is when I really like to bring Denise in because, as a training provider, to talk about a quick minute about the program history, So when you look at the slide real quick before I ask Denise, a few of my questions, the TechCred 101 is that the program application period opens 6 times per year. So you have 6 times per year that you can apply. And in each of those 6 periods, you can apply for training that you can then get reimbursed on up to $30,000 per period. So then that total becomes, if you look at the upper left hand corner, it becomes $180,000 of an opportunity to get reimbursed for the training that's valuable for your team. And the other number to pay attention to is the price or the reimbursement potential per credential or class. And we will get into those terms here in a little bit. But it's up to $2,000 per individual credential or class. And so, Denise, as a training provider, when we look at these numbers and this opportunity, and we think about the really ambitious and gracious goal of the state of Ohio in recognizing the future of workforce development, um, when you've now seen all of these companies since 2019 that have utilized the program, talk to me a little bit about that goal of the state and some of the numbers that they're reaching and what it means to companies in Ohio.
Yeah, been a huge program with the state of Ohio. It's interesting because it's what I've heard from the state is mainly organizations that are in the manufacturing sector have utilized it the most. It's interesting because when we talk to businesses, it's almost too good to be true, and they're looking for all the red tape, and there's a little red tape, but not enough to really make it to the point where you wouldn't want to do it. And you'll hear more about that from an actual customer. It's been, I like to say, life-changing for an organization's culture. So many times a organization is hesitant to even send employees to an Excel class that might only cost $350. And now they're doing it like every month and in bulk because now they can train everyone and not worry about the dollars or their budgets or anything like that. And the culture that has um, resulted from that kind of initiative and that kind of upskilling culture has been huge for many of these organizations. We had one client on a call a while ago, and he said, "This has changed the culture of our company. We used to not be able to train people. We have another company that they're dealing with tariffs right now, and they said we have zero budget for training, and without TechRed, no one in the whole organization would be getting trained." So even if you don't use 180 per year, even if you need 30,000 for the whole year or 10,000, it's still all reimbursable. So companies as big as Great American Insurance and as small as, little, four-person companies are using TechRed. It's a tremendous program.
And so, when we look, Denise, at some of the success, and we update these numbers every so often, and I actually, I can actually tell you that it's been more than $116 million in total funding and more than 100,000 credentials that have been earned by employees in Ohio. And Denise, I think there's a lot of times you and I are aware that companies have employees that are going out and they're getting classes, but it seems like also now this funding, though, the amount of opportunity that's available, there's a lot more planning that has to go into it and understanding what each individual in each department and what they need. How have the conversations between especially you with your experience and clients changed now that they're actually looking to utilize as much of that $180,000 as possible? It seems like there's a lot more planning that has to take place.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we first start with a company, they might just stick their, big toe in the water and just try to get some training that they know they have a group of 5 people that need, whatever it is, agile training or Excel training. And then as they get the training and they get reimbursed, they go, oh my gosh. So then we start to encourage them to talk, to apply for things they know they're going to need in the future, even though they may not know what employees exactly are going to take that training. Because once you apply and get approved, you can take training, the actual classes, up to 12 to 14 months after you've been approved. So then, as companies start really utilizing these dollars, our bigger companies, especially like a TQL or Great American Insurance, which really they use that whole 180,000 every year, they really do need to get into a planning mode to make sure that they are maximizing those funds, no pun intended. But it becomes a change in culture how they look at their training and how they plan for that. I hope I answered that question.
Absolutely. That's been one of the most impactful things on me as I've been working with the program. I mean, you've been working with it since 2019. I've been working with it more, the last couple of years. And it's been really interesting to hear the conversations about how do they assess what team members, what employees need, how do they help even, I mean, now there's companies that departments are fighting over the funding and when to get it in and to everybody now wants this training and the opportunity to train. And I think what has also impacted me the most is how special it feels that when the leadership really allows for tech cred to benefit them the most, how impactful it is on the actual employees that are receiving that upskilling. And I think that's exactly what you were touching on. So let's talk a little bit about um, let's bring in Marianne because I'm gonna go ahead and go through the process and eligibility and credentials, but I really want our guest today to walk away with a great sense of not only Denise's experience, but also Marianne Sherwood. So Marianne, if you're ready, I'd like to go ahead and talk to you about um, what was that spark that really got you to the point that you were ready to try tech cred to, as Denise said, dip your toes in the water? Um, what got you started with taking advantage of the tech cred program?
Part of it's like a twofold area there. A lot we had just transitioned to Office 365 in December of 2019. And then by March of 2020, we were working remotely. So we didn't have the opportunity to really gather everybody together to do training on the products that were in with this new Office 365 that we all had. So we had Teams and SharePoint, OneDrive. And once we were able to get back together, we knew we needed to do some training. That was very important to us, just so that we can upskill our staff, strengthen our workforce, make everybody more efficient. We utilized that. Like I said, we did specific trainings. We had a trainer come on site once we were all back working in a building. They came on site. They went through Teams. Our agency transitioned to an agency SharePoint site from networked drives. So we did the SharePoint training. Along with that was the OneDrive, getting everybody used to using that as opposed to going to that network drive. We also have initiatives in our strategic plan that we really tried to work towards, which is maximizing existing technology and exploring new technology. So I was a little bit familiar with the TechCred, just the program. I had a relative that was involved and worked at the state of Ohio and was involved in TechCred. So I had heard of it. So then I started digging into it and thought this would be great for our small little agency, because Perry County is in southeastern Ohio. We are small, like I said, a very small community. But our organization, what we do is we provide services for people with developmental disabilities. And we currently serve over 475 people. So we need to equip our staff with the best technology and the best information so that they can perform their duties. And with TechCred, it's something that's very cost effective. It's a good return on investment for the time and the knowledge that is gained.
Absolutely. Now, prior to using TechCred, how did your organization view or fund employee upskilling?
Well, we have a very small budget. The majority of our funding comes from local levies. So we want to be fiscally responsible for our agency. So we did, like I said, we did have a small budget, and most of that was geared towards training for staff. Mostly that was required annually. It's for certain certifications or credentials that are required by the Department of Developmental Disabilities. It's guidelines we had to follow. So now we are able to. We've increased our budget. We've only done it like $20,000 to $30,000 annually over the last couple of years. But we do that knowing that we can apply for TechCred and get reimbursement and have that training.
Absolutely. Did you have any hesitation or concerns about the TechCred process, or prior to your first application? What were some of the things that gave you a little pause before you got your first application in?
Just learning. I learned a little bit. I reviewed it online about the program. My concern was just having all the information I needed, and especially being a county agency, getting the information I needed from our county commissioners, some numbers and information like that. But I just thought that it sounded great to be able to train our staff and get reimbursed. But I can't say that I really had any real concerns.
Well, it probably helped that you had a family member somewhat very close to the program. It gave a little more trust and credibility there. For the individuals that have taken training, have you had an opportunity? Have you heard from? What has their reaction been to the investment in their upskilling?
I've had good response, and annually I do a survey, getting information, asking, what do you want? And everybody has been pleased with the trainings that we've had. It's been very helpful. And I've had some notes that just last year we just opened it up to Microsoft Office 365 classes. They could pick and choose what they wanted. We had approximately 39 of our 45 staff participated, and they did over 88 classes within that time frame. And our most recent one and in 2025, we decided, technology's changing with everything with the AI. We did an intro to AI, and that really, you wouldn't believe how many people just said, I didn't know it could do that much. And so that training was very helpful. So that everything has been very helpful for our staff. And like I said, I've received great responses from them.
Great. And so if you had any words of wisdom, any advice for a company that has not applied yet, what would you say to them?
Apply.
Just do it. Take the next step.
Take the step. It's simple. It's easy. I was able to, my first application, I worked with several people from Max Technical Training. We did a remote session. They helped me walk through the actual process of completing the application, getting all the information in, and I was able just to hit submit, and then wait for my results.
Wonderful. Mary Ann, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and thank you for joining us. And please, if anyone has any questions for Mary Ann, throw them in right now. I know we just got a few questions in, and so I'm going to take a quick pause on moving through our slides to address some of those questions. I'll start at the top. And again, Mary Ann, thank you very much for your time and your responses. I greatly appreciate it. So one of the questions
You're
that came
welcome.
in is thinking about what's going on. We try not to get too political during our meetings, but with what's going on in cuts in funding, uh, I don't believe, and there has been no talk about a disruption in the funding, especially for those that have already been engaged in the program, already applied, or some type of an issue between you taking the class and reimbursement. Of course, we cannot make any promises or guarantees on anything. I'm going to lean a little bit on Denise here because she speaks to some individuals with the state, and I think she's had some words or conversations. And so, Denise, do you want to respond to that one a little bit?
Yeah, when the whole this new administration came in, I did have numerous conversations with the state, and I can tell you that once they approve, that you get that approval, like Marianne was saying, you apply and Dustin will walk you through. Once you get this, you get a contract with the state that says you are approved. And once you have that contract with the state that you're approved to take that training, you still have those 12 months or whatever to take that training and get reimbursed. I also know that this is part of the Ohio state budget that is paid for by our tax dollars, and that budget has been approved. So for the next 2 years, why this administration, I'm talking about our Ohio governor, is still in, we are, I think we're fine. So I don't think there's any issue. And I'll take it even a step farther. If you go through the process and you sign up for training with Max, and for some reason you can't get reimbursed, because the state has cut funding, we'll just help you out there. The only time that, and this is part of the TechCred program, and it's something to make sure that you're aware of, and this doesn't have anything to do with government cuts with Doge or anything like that. It's mainly if you have an employee go through that training and then they leave your company, um, and then you apply for reimbursement and they're no longer at your company, that you can't get reimbursed for that. So what we usually tell companies is, make sure those employees sign the verification form that they're an employee, and make sure that you ask for reimbursement shortly after that class so that you can get reimbursed before there could be any change in their employment. So, but other than that, I hope I answered that question or put some of your fears at ease.
We've heard a lot of positive words about the program, and the program itself, as Denise has said, is one of the most, we look at it as one of the most successful, and it's being copied by other states. So there's a lot going in the favor of the program. Now, one of the things that I hope this workshop does is the more companies that use it, the more results they can prove. And that's why a lot of the data they collect in the process, I believe, is to have that evidence of the success of the program. But we're really trying to be advocates to get as much use out of the program as possible, because that also, doing our part, is going to help the success and the long term or the longevity of that program. And so let me make it to the next question here. Are any business types not included in this? For example, smaller, maybe a law firm or a smaller business, or I also see a marketing agency. It's really not as much about the business type as it is being an Ohio company having, and we're going to get, next we're going to get into what you're going to need to collect as far as your business information to apply. But it really comes down to being a registered Ohio company, having the right documentation that you're going to need, and then having W-2 employees. It really is, any further than that, it's not as much about the industry that you're in. And it's also not about the type, your type of business or even size. It really is more about, comes down to the verification that they do for employment and needing to be a W-2 employee. Um, and also, I just saw another question. Is there an age limit? I assume that's as far as the employee or student taking the course. Denise, correct me. I have not heard anything about any age limits. I don't believe I saw that in the program
I think
guidelines.
it might be 16 because I know we've had high school students go through the program through Inter Alliance.
Okay. Okay. We can double check on that, Ed.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question. We can double check and reconfirm that information. That's really the first time I had seen that one in one of our events. But we'll take a look at the program guidelines, and I've got everybody's email, so I'll keep an eye on that and double check, Ed, and get some information emailed over to you. When we do our meeting follow-ups. So let's talk a little bit about, since there are questions about what type of companies and eligibility, I guess we'll call it. And so for the TechCred process, you're going to need an Ohio ID. We use the Ohio ID logo right there because it's something anyone can get. Anyone can go on and get an Ohio ID. I will tell you, it does take approximately about or certain the Ohio ID you can actually get pretty quickly. That's pretty instant if you go on to apply. And then you're going to need to complete the employer application, which we're going to go over today. And the next step in the TechCred process as a whole is actually taking the class, having the individual taking the class, and then receiving the credential completion documentation, because you're going to need that when you reach the fourth stage in the process, which is reimbursement. So you're going to need to have an Ohio ID, complete the employer application, actually take the class, and then submit for reimbursement. It really is a few simple steps. So in order to be eligible for the Ohio TechCred program, you're going to need a physical Ohio address. We have found that, and Denise, again, correct me if I'm wrong, PO boxes do not work. It's an actual physical address. You must be a registered business with the state of Ohio. Your employees must be Ohio residents. There is a grace for incumbent workers that if they don't live in Ohio currently, you can apply for them to take a class as long as when you go for your reimbursement, they have their Ohio address at that time. So if they're not in Ohio and you're hiring and bringing them in, you can actually have them take a class before they're a resident. And so the prospective Ohio residents. And then one of the other unique parts of TechCred eligibility is, of course, the employer has to make the upfront investment into the actual cost of the course. Denise, was there anything you wanted to add on eligibility?
Yeah, I just didn't want it to sound like the Ohio business had to have all Ohio employees. It's just this is only reimbursable for Ohio residents of that employer.
Yeah, so what we've seen is for companies, and we get asked this all the time, well, what do I do about my Northern Kentucky residents? A lot of organizations are shifting the training budget they have or that they allocated for Ohio residents, and then they are, utilizing their budget to then cover out of state employees and just kind of shifting their funds around a little bit, which is what we've seen quite a bit. There are also some cases where, just to give us a little bit of a gold star, we have had a few cases where we've been able to include maybe, one Kentucky resident in a class of 10 Ohioans that are getting reimbursed. That's something that, with like a private or custom course that we've been able to work out because we want to be helpful to that organization in the long run. So let's talk about that's your eligibility. Let's talk briefly about what is a credential. We've discussed in our previous workshops that a lot of times the traditional sense of credential, especially in IT fields, is you've got to take a class or a series of days in a class, and then there's an exam and you've got to pass it, and then there's a badge or a certification, and that's a credential. And so really the way the state of Ohio looks at it is a credential is basically a class. It could be your foundational level of Excel and Excel level 1. It could be a CompTIA Net Plus, something that does carry a certification. So really any class that you can take that is industry recognized, technology focused, and short term. So as Denise mentioned, 12 months. So you've got to complete that class within 12 months of your application date or your approval, the program period in which you were approved. And so it can be anything from business technology and we mentioned manufacturing is really big right now, healthcare technology. So, but as long as your credential and on the TechCred website, there's actually a credential search. And so you can search by category, like I mentioned, healthcare or manufacturing, business IT, information technology. And also you can just use their search bar and just look for the subject or the area of the technology that you're looking for. And you can see if that is an approved credential in the TechCred listing. So now as a business or an organization, in order to apply, you're going to need an Ohio payee ID number. If your organization has never done business in a way that the state would have to send you funds or money, you may not have an Ohio payee ID yet. You can get a payee ID, and there's an application that you must submit. And that's the one where I'll tell you that can take up to 10 days to get your payee ID. That's one of the reasons why we host these events in the middle of the month, is so that way you have enough time if you don't have a payee ID and you want to prepare for the July application period, you've got time to kind of get your ducks in a row. You're also going to need your Ohio charter number. And I'm going to share a document with you at the end of this workshop. I'm going to send you a link that's going to have all of this information on it. Again, we are also going to provide via email post-event on our slide deck and a recording to this session that you can visit. So if you don't catch all of this right now or aren't able to take notes at the moment, I'm sure all of us have attended a workshop, virtual meeting in the car, and we'll go ahead and make sure you have all of the materials that you need. But your Ohio charter number is really one of the easier documents to obtain. You can do it through a very open and public search on the businesssearch.ohiosos.gov and just search your business name. And hopefully it's not too much in common with other ones, because that can happen. But you'll need to then obtain your business detail report in the same exact place. So normally when I help people apply and they say, well, I don't have my business detail report and I don't know my charter number, what I do is I go over to the businesssearch.ohiosos.gov. I'll search for their business name, and then I'll click on the one that aligns with their business. And the business detail report that you can download from that website also has your Ohio charter number in it. So you really can get both of those done at the exact same time. And then the data point that should be the easiest to obtain is your EIN number, your federal tax ID. And just as a quick note, because these are some of the caveats that we've learned after going through this with multiple companies, is if your company has multiple companies and you're getting employees from different branches of that, make sure that when you submit your application and you're using your EIN, make sure that you are using the individual EIN for that company, for those employees, which means you may need to do multiple submissions. But you want to make sure that if you are a company with multiple entities, multiple EINs, that you're not just utilizing one EIN for all employees, because that will get complicated in the reimbursement process and you may not get reimbursed based on your application. I'm going to take a breath real quick and take a pause, and I'm going to answer a few questions that have come through. If anybody would like to unmute and ask any questions right now of myself, of Denise, or if we can throw something over to Mary Ann at this point as well. Does anyone else have any questions at the moment? Okay, let me go ahead and go through the chat questions then. So is the funding available for all types of training? For instance, signing up for Coursera or other online training? So when you do a credential search on the TechCred website, it is going to give you recommended training providers in the state of Ohio who work with TechCred, are familiar with the program. And Denise, feel free to jump in and correct me. I believe you can still use something like a Coursera. They do allow that. Now, I'll be very honest with you. If we're doing training for Ohio companies and W-2 Ohio employees, we would really love for you to do your best to make an effort to try and find an Ohio training provider. I think it's in the best spirit of the award, of this opportunity. So we would like to see you stay with an Ohio training provider. We understand that there's times that we don't offer the training and people can't find it in Ohio. And I think that that's one of the reasons why it is still open by the state to go out and find training from other providers. But yes, you can do that. The limitation, I think, after the first couple of years, that I will tell you, is like internal training. You can't develop your own internal training program, put your employees through it, and then go get reimbursed from it. You do need to work with a provider that is not within your organization. That is one of the limitations, but you can technically go outside of the state of Ohio.
Right, that's
Okay.
correct. The Coursera or LinkedIn Learning or anything other online training providers, if you did want to utilize some of them, you can do that through TechCred, as long as it's technology training.
All right. Let me make sure that we stay on our timeline here. Real quick example, because we've gotten a lot of questions on this lately, and I don't want to take too deep of a dive into it, but when you're searching for credentials on the TechCred website and you're looking at your service provider, here's a quick example. One of our class names at Max is, we'll just use Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams for Business Users is the name of the class. When you do a credential search on the TechCred website, you're going to find that doing a search for Microsoft Teams is actually going to show you the Microsoft Office Suite certificate grouping. So basically, the state of Ohio wants to make this easy for you. And providers like us, we have individual names and naming conventions that we use. And they can also change over time. And the state can't keep adding in all of these individual names. So I don't want you to get hung up on, well, Max has Microsoft Teams for Business Users, Really, the credential that you're looking for is Microsoft Teams. That general umbrella credential will cover any of our Microsoft Teams training, no matter what our naming convention is. The Microsoft Teams credential, if you're looking to visually see it and make sure that you have the right one, you'll find it within the Microsoft Office Suite certificate group. So, really, what I'm saying to you in its simplest form is look for the umbrella. If it's a Microsoft Word training, but there's like extra words in the title of it, like ours for business users, then you're really just looking for Microsoft Word or Microsoft Outlook. You're looking for that umbrella. They are trying to make it easy for you. You don't necessarily need the exact word for word term from your training provider. So hopefully that'll help you out. This is something that often when we work with people that are doing their first application, this is one of the areas that we provide a lot of assistance. So when you're applying, and this is jumping right into the actual application, this is what the screen is that you're going to see. And this is really what we wanted to bring to you. If you've not, of course, if you've not been through this process, there are 3 tabs for your submission: applicant information, training plan, and submitting your application. So it really comes down to those 3 simple steps. And so I'm not going to go through every single field, but as we said with your eligibility, you're going to need your tax ID. They ask if you're a government entity, you're going to provide your basic business information, and they want to know if you've been verified with the state of Ohio. This is the first part of your screen. The next part, as you scroll down, they're going to, and I'm gonna give you a little tidbit here, something to make this easier. If you look at this right here, if you see upload a copy of the Secretary of State's business detail report, you're not going to be able to do that immediately. It is going to be grayed out just like it shows right here. Continue to fill out everything else, and when you get to the bottom of the screen, you're going to hit save. Once you hit save for the first time on this screen, you will scroll back up, and the business detail report that we talked about that you're going to download from the public search, that's where you're going to drop that file. I know it seems like a lot right now. I can already feel it, but it's really, I can already sense it. But I don't want you to get to that part where it looks like you should be able to hit a button and drop a file in to upload. You're going to be able to do it, but just we'll go ahead and go through the rest of this. So then you enter your business, your Ohio charter number, your payee ID, and then it's going to ask you a few questions about your business, its location, some different details, your website address. It's going to ask you for the contact information. Now, I highly recommend that this is the individual that is going to be the champion of TechCred for your organization. This is where the emails are going to go. This is who's going to be notified of your approvals. This person should be the hub of communication for everything that is going to go on within your TechCred application submissions and reimbursement. And so this should be that person's information. I have seen an organization that the individual filling at least this application out for the first time realized, hey, I'm not that person. And they went ahead and entered in the other individual's information. And so you can do that. And so right here, if you see the 3 buttons at the bottom, and I recommend you do this on all 3 tabs, hit save before you hit next. Just so nothing happens within your browser that you've got to go back and do this again. Hit save, and then this is when you'll scroll back up and add your business detail report. That button will now be live. I can't tell you why that is. It's just this. So now it's also going to ask you if you're a part of a PEO. Out of all of the people and all of the companies I've helped apply and go through this process, I've only had one. but it does add another layer. You are going to need to reach out to your PEO probably for some of the information that they're asking for. I know the client that I worked with had to reach out to, hers was out of Florida, and they didn't have the EIN number for that organization. And so this can add an extra layer. So if you are a part of a PEO, I would say let's kind of get together and maybe talk about it a little bit before we get into the application process, just to make sure you have everything that you need. And then your training plan. So this goes back to credential names. Um, Here is
Dustin, I
where,
just wanted to say one thing before you keep going. The part that Dustin just covered is more of a first time application. Is that correct, Dustin? So then you'll come to this page at each time following that. Correct? You may want to.
I'm I'm not 100% that each time you go in to fill out your application, I don't know that you don't have to do. I don't know
That
that
would be
you
a
don't
good
have to.
question for Marianne. I don't think you have to go put in your EIN number every time. I'm not sure. Marianne, can you help there?
Yes, a lot of that is information that you put in the first time does stay within your system under your login. So, and it's pre-filled, and that you just kind of verify the information. So you don't
Yeah,
have to do most of it
no, but
after
you
the
do
first
have to
time.
but there, you do have to re-verify it. Do you just hit save then at the bottom?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Marianne. You do just have to fill that part out, but the training plan part of it, you do not have to identify by name or personal information who is going to be taking the class at this point in time. Here, you are going to use their credential. A box is going to pop up when you hit add credential, and you are going to have to go through their credential list to find the one that you're looking for. And that's where I recommend, as we talked about Microsoft Teams, it's alphabetical order. You're going to scroll down to the M's, you're going to find Microsoft, and then you're not looking necessarily for Max's Microsoft Teams for Business users class name. You're looking for just the umbrella credential of just Microsoft Teams. It'll make things easier for you. And so here you will add as many of those credentials as you're going to want in the training plan that you are submitting for approval. And so you're gonna want to have all of the information that you're going to need. When I help people go through this process, one thing I'll tell you: if you don't have um, a training provider that's working with you while you're filling this out, I recommend that you have either a spreadsheet or a Word doc of the name of the course, the cost of the course, and whether it's virtual or in person. When I walk people through it, I keep our website open and I'm actually searching and looking up all of the courses because they're going to need to know how much the course is and also whether it's virtual or in person. So you want to make sure that you have that handy for you because it'll make it a lot easier when you're filling this out, especially if you're submitting for say 3, 4, 5 different courses. It'd be nice to just kind of have a Word doc with, the name of the course, the cost of the course, and virtual or in person, because you will need that. And so then what it's going to ask you is how many people are taking that credential. So if we keep with the Microsoft Teams example, you would say Microsoft Teams for business users, it's $350, and I'm going to be putting 5 people into that course. So what you're asking for is approval for 5 credentials of Microsoft Teams to get reimbursed later after the course has been completed. Does anybody have any questions so far? I want to check our chat and just take a quick pause.
Dustin,
Yes.
so you have to do this ahead of time, correct? Like if someone took some kind of training, technology training, like in 2 weeks ago, it's too late for that, correct?
You got me on a funny date there because you can retroactively go back, but it is in the month, the 30 days prior to the next open application period. So our next open application period is in July.
Okay.
And so if you apply in July, you can go back and get anything in June. That's why I said you said 2 weeks ago, and I'm looking at the date, and that probably would have put it in May. And I'm not sure that we could have retroactively gotten that one approved. But
Okay.
if you find a course in the month and you decide to take it because that's when it's offered and available, I mean that happens. And you take it in June, when you go to apply in July, yes, you can submit that for that time period. But one thing I'll tell you is you'll probably have to go back to that training provider
Mhm.
and make sure that you get all of the documentation that you're going to need. Like if
Okay.
it's it's a certificate, or there's certain documentation specifically you're going to need to verify that that person took the course. And
Okay.
oftentimes, if it's a course you take directly through us, we already know what you're going to need for TechCred. Sometimes it may be a course through us that's with a partner, and you'll end up needing to work with that partner to get the documentation that you need for
Okay.
your reimbursement. But yes, there is a window for retroactively applying. I
Okay.
just 30 days prior to your course.
Okay. I did have another question, but I don't want to take up
Sure.
too much time.
No,
If
go
you
right
want me to
ahead.
save it to the end, that's fine.
Yeah, if you don't mind, actually, if you'll either throw it into the chat or save it till the end. I want to make sure, because we've got 8 minutes left, I want to make sure that I get through the remainder of these, but we will definitely come back to you. And so you're going to end up providing the trainee information for each of the credentials. And then the third tab, I also recommend, even once you get here, hit save. This is just confirming, and this is really I think the contractual check boxes that, as Denise said, once you're approved, it really creates a contract between you and the state. So this is confirming, terms and conditions, program guidelines. And so you'll check these boxes, and the person doing the submission is going to end up providing their name a couple of times with your title, and then this is where you're going to submit. Now, once you get to this spot, let's say you're doing it on July 5th. No, nobody would do it on July 5th. Let's do the 6th, July 6th. But you can hit save here and come back and wait to submit. You may want to give yourself, or say, I'd like to get all this done, but I may have somebody a week from now that may also want to submit. So this is where you would actually you could hit save and leave your submission, and then go back in later on and hit submit um, when you're actually ready to go. So reimbursement submission. Denise, will you do me a favor? Can you talk reimbursement submission for a minute, if you don't mind? Can you
Yeah, sure.
this part and this slide, if you could?
Sure. Sure. So for reimbursement, you need a number of things to, you've got to actually take the class. You need proof of credential completion, which is just our, like we issue a certificate of completion from Max, and most training companies have some certificate of completion. Employment verification is a form that you'll have each employee, Ohio employee, fill out. And that really just started, I would say, 6 months ago. And I don't know if individuals were gaming the system or what, but this is really just to verify that that employee really does work for you and that employee is verifying that they took the course. Any invoices, for example, from Max, and you have to show that they've been paid. So you have to show that you've paid them because, again, this is a reimbursement program. And then for each participant, you need their name, the last four of their social security, their date of birth, their county of residence, and then, and this is a funny one, their wage before or after credential. And we put some asterisks there because most of the time, if someone takes an Excel class, their wage is not going to increase. I think the state is just looking for, especially if someone took a longer program, like a 6-month program that might be at the university. Well, once they achieve that certification or that verification, will their wages go up? Yes or no? So this one, it's totally okay if you say, well, their wage is $25 an hour, and after the certification or the credential, it'll still be $25 an hour. That's not going to affect whether you're going to be approved or not.
Absolutely. Thank you, Denise. I
You're
appreciate that.
welcome.
Just to share a little bit, again, no sales pitches here. This is really for any company, but some of the most popular credentials that we've seen applied for at Max have been a lot of our Office 365 suite. Power Apps has been really big. If you haven't started to see, if you're a Microsoft, if your business relies on Microsoft and you haven't seen what's coming with Copilot, I'm sure that you will. They're doing a lot of changes and a lot of integrations are starting to get pushed out to the public. So Microsoft Copilot's a big one, CompTIA, Azure, machine learning, data analytics, and Power BI has just been, that seems to be one of the fastest growing areas. Agile and Scrum, Safe, ITIL is huge right now. We're seeing a lot of the IT kind of a little bit of project management with a technical spin. So those are all big areas. If you're interested, we have that QR code will take you directly to our TechCred page. I know somebody actually had graciously had put the link in there for our TechCred page, and we have a lot of our courses. I'll say a lot of the courses that we're highlighting on our TechCred page really come from popularity and demand, but use our course search because they're not all listed there by far. I mean, we've got 500 plus in our course catalog. And so I want to make sure that we've got time to get all of our questions. And so give me 1 second as I scroll through here. So can you take classes from multiple providers within Ohio? That's a great question. And one thing I do want to note, when you fill out for your credential, it is going to ask you what training provider you are selecting. It does not lock you into that training provider.
We could add like a bunch of classes from all different providers on the same application.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. And then do you
Yes.
have to, I was the other one that asked the question right below, like, and I think Robert said something too, like about adding all the courses, because if the enrollment's July 1st to the 30th, when can you take the classes? Is it only in July or is it?
No. So there's a lot of companies that wait for their approval to come in. So when you apply in July, if you talk to us and we look at what credential, what class you're looking to take, as long as your company information and your state information is all good, we very, very rarely see denials or rejections of the approvals.
Okay.
It's been minimal now, but we have, but there still are a lot of companies that want to wait until they get that official approval from the state before they go and spend their money. And I totally understand that. Even though we don't see very many denials at all, especially like if it's a Microsoft course or a CompTIA or, some of the ones I just listed, we don't see those getting denied as long as your business information, your EIN, all of that stuff is in line. Then you could take that class as early as July prior to your approval. But I also see a lot of companies waiting until they get that for sure state approval in their hands before they start scheduling. And you've got 12 months once you receive your approval to get that class completed.
Okay, that makes sense. So like so the window is just to get the approval, get everything that you want to take potential and then you can't add any more classes until the next window.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. That makes
And
sense.
that's why you want to wait to submit, Aaron, until you've really made sure you have, during that application period, Dustin said, save, save, save.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't reached that 30,000, and then you go back to someone else in your organization and say, let's say you're at 20,000, your total, and then someone else says, oh, can you add this class? Once you hit submit, you can't go back and add. So
I
if you
gotcha.
saved, you
Okay.
can go back and add another class, another credential.
But only within the open enrollment period.
Yes,
Okay.
right. And there's 6 of those a year.
Okay. So
The
you could
next
add a
one's in
grouping in
July.
July and then like once those are approved, those people can start taking the classes if you choose to go that route because you want to make sure
Yes,
and then you can add more once the next open enrollment.
yes, you
Okay.
got it.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. You'd be looking at September. And then while we're speaking on that, for reimbursements, you can submit for reimbursement anytime. The only caveat to that is you can only submit one reimbursement per month. It doesn't
Okay.
matter when you do it, but like you can't submit for reimbursement on the 10th of September and then again on the 27th.
Okay.
So it's one reimbursement per month. So that's something definitely to note. Let me answer this question. It's about being a nonprofit in Cincinnati. Um, Danielle, did you want to pop back on? I believe this one is yours. Um, Offering digital literacy trainings and job readiness trainings, workforce and financial coaching. Is there a way to get the digital literacy certified? So the first thing is whomever is going to be taking the training must be a W-2 employee of your organization.
Got it.
That's number
Okay.
one. Number two, for any training provider to get certified, Denise, is there a specific thing that you need to do with the state of Ohio? How is that selected?
I can talk to you about that offline. I'm not 100% sure right now.
Okay.
It's usually employer driven. So if an employer says, hey, I want to take training at Cincinnati Works, that's partly how you become a provider to that employer. I don't
Okay.
know if you can provide training for those individuals that are coming to you. And I'm familiar with Cincinnati Works, so I can talk to you about that offline.
All right. Thank you, Denise.
You're welcome.
For each submission, adding, I believe if I add a lot of courses that I think our employees may take to get as close to the 30,000 as possible, is that approach frowned upon? That approach is not frowned upon, but what I've been watching closely personally is and trying to reach out to the companies that I see a lot of expiring credentials that they did not take the class. The state has not seemingly made a move to that is a big concern of theirs. And I don't know how they look at, I don't want to say repeat offenders, but of people applying for, you know, 20 category or 20 credentials per application period and maxing out those credential approvals per application period. And then to find out maybe 80% of those end up going expired because what they're doing is they're earmarking that funding for you. And then, yes, that funding eventually can go back into the pot of money, but I would think that that's going to make planning or potentially available funding for other organizations maybe a little bit more difficult. So, really, what we would encourage is to have a good sense of your end users, their schedule, availability, and your budget, and make sure that whatever you're applying for, that you're ready to pay that money up front to utilize the TechCred process to its fullest capabilities, and to try to reduce as much and as many expiring credentials as possible. Denise, did you have any follow up on
And
that?
yeah, the only other thing I was going to say is once you apply for reimbursement, like the approval takes about, 45 to 60 days, but the reimbursement, what I'm hearing, it's more like 15 days. And Marianne, you could verify that if you're still on.
Yes, the reimbursement is very quick.
Good. So that's what companies want.
Right.
Yeah.
This is such an awesome program. I'm so happy you guys put this together and that I found this. At least I heard about it through an AI seminar I did, and she was just going on and on about the TechCred program, and I'm like, let me look into this for our
That's
organization,
cool.
and I've already like sent it out just to gauge some interest on classes that would be available. So I'm grateful that you guys put this together because it was very, very helpful.
It's great. It would be grateful for the state too, but thank you, Erin.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. We appreciate that greatly. And so, like we said, the next application period is in July. And so now is the time to get all of your documentation together, everything we talked about for eligibility, and get ready to apply. If there's anything that we can do to help, please let us know. Here are some helpful resources. I'm going to send an email, like I said, after. I'm going to send an email. I would probably look for that email. I'd probably say Friday, maybe early morning on Friday. And I'm going to include a link to the recording of this session. I will also include a PDF that basically summarizes a lot of the TechCred program guidelines. And then there's actually a PDF directly from the state of their program guidelines. And I like to include that as well. So I will send you some resources on Friday. And one more quick question.
I do have one other quick question too, if I can get that in whenever you're done with that one.
I've got plenty of time to be able to answer questions. I am always ready to run a little bit longer. I want to just make sure.
You're gonna regret saying that, Dustin.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Never. Let me get this one real quick
Yep.
that came in through the chat, since you're willing to come on and be conversational with me. Looking at one from Max for my employees for ITIL, something I think would be more beneficial to do in person. Okay. I want to tackle, because this is my favorite. So our open enrollment courses that are available through our website, that was really built for anybody that needs any course at any time to go find what they're looking for. Also, though, and my favorite part of it is when I get to consult on understanding your end users, your business goals, and your business challenges. And then we can coordinate with an expert instructor, whether he's local or national, and their curriculum, to be able to customize a course directly for your team's needs. I heard from one of our clients, and he mentioned it'd be really great if our training could be private, and we don't have questions from other individuals that don't really align with our organization or what we're dealing with. And it just hit me. I'm like, that's so valuable. And I still love in-person training. I still like having somebody in the room that's right there. Virtual can be great sometimes, and I know we're doing this virtually, but I love sitting down and really hearing about where your business is trying to go and what the training can do for you, and being able to coordinate that expert and creating a curriculum that's going to reach your goals. So yes, we do have open enrollment, and some people may say out of the box training, but private, custom, we will find the expert that you need. And Denise I've been doing this for just a couple of years, because I was originally on our boot camps, but Denise has been customizing courses and working with clients for years. And I think, tell me if I'm wrong, I think that's one of the most fun parts of, doing the work that you do.
Yeah, I mean, we have, I think United Wheels just joined us and we just did a private AI boot camp for them that was a 2 day. And we went to their site. That's TechCred approved. Mary Ann, we've been to her site and at Perry County to be on site there. And I believe you've taken advantage of just virtual off the shelf type classes. So we love to make it really work for you because this is time and money. Even though it's being reimbursed by the state, it's still time and there's a cost there. So we really want to, again, maximize the time that you spend and the dollars that you spend in any training. So we're always happy to do a custom solution.
All right, Aaron, shoot.
Okay, I'm just looking on the Ohio TechCred application site and it says log into OHID. Is that like a company ID? I know I've done that personally, like for things, but like, does it have to be like one of the partners who own the firms, their Ohio ID, or is that the business thing once I create the account? Um, like you mentioned early on.
Your Ohio ID would be it could be associated with you. You're going to create an Ohio ID.
Okay, so I would use my personal one, even since I already
Yeah.
have one created, even though
Yeah.
it's for the company.
Yep.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
use it for yourself, for your company, for anyone. It's really an identifier for you.
Okay. That was it.
That was easy.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Well, and it would still get reimbursed to the company, not me, right?
Yes,
Yes.
because
Okay.
then when you put the company information in later,
Okay.
that's for the company.
Okay, perfect.
You're just saying, hey, I'm who I am. It's
Okay,
like,
perfect.
I'm a human, you know?
Okay. All right, that's great.
All right.
Well, because Aaron, sometimes we may have large organizations, especially like county organizations that have multiple departments, but are
Yeah.
working under different EIN or working actually oftentimes under the same EIN.
Yeah.
And we'll talk to somebody from a department and they're like, well, we're not applying. Who's applying? And well, whether it's through the Ohio ID or there's other
Oh,
data that's
gotcha.
out there for us, now we can actually find out who's putting the application in and try to coordinate the communication that's going on to make sure it's available to all departments. That's where the EIN gets tricky because it can only be, if multiple county organizations in this example use the same EIN, well, if somebody's already got an application in and then another department can't apply and they didn't apply for the full amount of funding, well, then, there's a little work that we can do. And so sometimes that identifier is a little helpful.
Oh, that makes complete sense. That's very helpful. Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else
Dustin,
have any last questions? Yes.
I did have a comment about that. We are a county agency. There are a couple, well, I guess there's just one other county department that have utilized it. When I go into my application through TechCred, I can see that other department has utilized it, but I can't see any of their information. I just see the person's name and I know what department they work for. And I can just see and also see their timelines on it. But because we share that EIN
Right.
information. But I also do want to tell everybody else that's in here, I have worked with Max Technical Training since 2022. I have had great success with this company. I've worked with Denise. There was 2 Wendy's that I've worked with, Dustin, Michael, Patricia, and Justin. I've worked with Justin a lot. We feel like, I think we are like old friends now that we've talked so much, but they've always been so helpful. And then also, once I've done the application and done my submission, staff from TechCred have also been very helpful. I had one submission, I missed a form. They just emailed me and we got that resolved real quick. Also, if I had some questions, I was able to email and got responses. Shannon, I've had responses from Shannon and Dana, Avery, and Kelsey, all within TechCred. So they're very helpful also. So both organizations, and they work well together.
That's awesome.
you, Mary
I'm happy
Ann.
to hear this. This is great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wish, and that's why we record these, because just getting those words out there to other people, because one of the numbers, and when you think about how many companies are in Ohio, it's ballpark estimated around 2 million. And even when you think about 116 plus $1 million has been reimbursed so far, that's less than 4,000 companies in Ohio.
Wow.
So that, what Marianne just shared there about the state and their team and everybody that's an advocate for this and trying to work towards this goal of getting more companies. Really, I think for us at Max, it's really about that upskilling culture. And this funding is just a way to help build that. And I think that that's the long-term value of the program. So those kind words are really what we need to share with everyone else, and just how positive the program is, because even for as much as they've given out, it's underutilized. Well, listen,
Thanks,
thank you,
Marianne.
everyone. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate you joining us. I appreciate you sharing. And look at that. Marianne has used over $70,000 worth of training so far, which is incredible. And so I appreciate everybody spending some of your time today with us. Again, I'll get that follow-up email out on Friday. I hope you enjoyed the session. And also, tell a friend to tell a friend. We do this every month that the program period is closed, about in the middle of the month, where there's enough, about 2 weeks before the program period reopening again, just as a service to the business community in Ohio, so that we can continue to help organizations get prepared to apply. So thank you all for your time. We really appreciate you joining us, and hopefully we'll see you apply in July.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.